Hello and welcome. Apologise for the way things are at present, and I apologise that things are going the way they are. Right, for me, there's not been an awful lot of change. I am, though, in temporary accommodation as it is. Now then, we've had some breakthroughs when it comes to the knowledge of the information that I have placed out on the internet relating to brand new technology development of space and the technology that will allow certain things to be able to function in space, and also how to be able to create necessary relevant energy, which will be continuous energy from the saturation technology that will use the environment of the sun's energy, which is already saturated, into our solar system. Now, I need to stress when it comes to the security and safety of nature's rules. Now, the universe, even though could be classed as a dangerous environment, is actually a realm of balance and safety. Now, out in space, we have a lot of radiation, and there is a lot of other masses of gases and particles and all sorts of large objects. And the vastness of space keep all of that in the realms of its own security and its own safety. Right, so we've got galaxies of clusters, and they're all in the realms of being safe in the order of their existence. Right, so they exist floating around one another, and they exist interacting with one another every now and then. Right, it isn't totally safe, admittedly. Right, but when it comes to the environment of mixing galaxies together, even though for some it might not be safe, for the majority of the objects that are in space, it is actually quite safe to be able to mix all these things together. We haven't found or got the knowledge of how all of this stays in a realm of utter and total security. A lot of it probably has got to do with gravitational fields and various other resistant environments and displacement, and not only displacement of space, but also the effects of gravity in its mass of volume of objects may also play a part of creating some safety zones of resistance against other items. So when the galaxies mix together, they don't actually explode, right? So the galaxies that come together, they've got two dirty, great, big, massive fueling cores of energy and light, and they all come together and merge together quite nicely to build a larger galaxy. So the fact we've got all this gravity, and we've got all this mass, and we've got all this volume of density, and yet we have all the displacement of space and what I call dark matter mixed in with all of this, colliding together. Now, there must be a lot of resistance when they actually come together. So when the two galaxies finally collide, they will come together and mix their cores. When the cores are mixed, right, there is not an area of volatility to it. They mix their cores and they come together as a larger galaxy. So it doesn't explode, and it doesn't go into supernova, and it doesn't go into any area of a major danger. All it does is eventually the two galaxies that were safe in the environment of their own space come together and mix themselves all the way to a larger galaxy. Now, it's part of nature in its habitat to allow all of that to happen. Now, I'm not saying there aren't things that don't explode. I'm not saying the things that don't produce extra materials during the days of the mixing, right? I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, but what I'm saying is that the galaxies in their entirety as galaxy, right, they will mix together and they coexist as a single body of a mass afterwards, right? In the process of mixing, there may be some things where older stars get stressed out, lose all their necessary stabilities, and they may explode, and they may go into nova, and they may produce extra gases, and they may produce extra materials for the new galaxy to be able to rebalance itself in the structure of its own size. And it would probably need more materials, it might need more gases, it might need certain areas of other things that nature would provide whilst these colliding continues and goes on. So when the galaxies finally settle down as a single supermassive galaxy, you will probably find that there are extra, what do you call them? A whole load of other new stellar objects for whoever survives the mixing to be able to keep an eye out and actually have a look at. Now, the light and its periodic tables, we know of a little bit. We know of the waveband frequencies of all the rainbow colors, and we know the variations in the frequencies of all those colors, going from extreme strength of density all the way through to a lighter shade of exactly the same density, but just a lighter shade, different frequencies that pan out across the whole of the light wave band, right? And you've got to remember this: the universe, even though volatile, the Earth itself is an environment of safety in what we would class as a hostile environment. To us, it's hostile. If we went out without any of our protection of spaceships or space suits or anything to be able to keep us together, because it's not our environment, we've evolved on a planetary structure called Earth, which is a safe body of particle mass and full of gases, oxygen and air, and a whole load of other ground materials that keep all of that continuously being a resistance to the environment of what we call volatile, which is space, where you can't survive in the way that we are made to survive. And because of it, the rules of nature means that the magnetic field around the Earth, right, has been designed to produce a level of security and safety for the things that get to live on the Earth, right? Now, in the universe, you won't possibly, and I'm only saying this with a question mark, really, over it, where we don't know whether life actually exists in space. We know it exists in space, but on places like Earth. And to have life grow and develop on Earth, it needs its environment. So it needs its magnetic field, it needs its oxygen and air resistance to the volatile environment of space. And when you're building things like new technology that is going to be in line with creational nature, you need to bear all these things in mind. So let's say, for instance, as an example, that we're going to take the magnetic shield of the Earth and its waveband frequency and its signature sets and every single thing that makes it known to the rest of the environment that it exists, and use that as the example of security and safety around what I would call a shield around a ship, right? It works already around the Earth, and it works and contains and helps to contain a whole load of environmental conditions. So because we know that we have one, And we also know that it helps protect the Earth, and it helps particles of speeding particles to bounce off. It helps the environmental resistance of the oxygen. But of course, it's not what you call 100% safe, because you can go through it and you can go back out past it. It's only if you are in certain areas where you have, let's say, velocity trajectory and various other things, that there is a known resistance that you will, slice off from the Earth and go off in a different direction. Now, we've also got gravitational well around us, so that's also something else which you need to bear in mind, that when you've got your spacecraft and your spaceship, and your power supply, which is constantly supplying electricity, right, to the ship, and all the other different styles of engine development, which will happen in the future. We're not there yet, but we are developing brand new engines, and we are developing brand new areas of propulsion through space. And all it takes is to be able to put all of this together, right? And then to ensure that we've got things in line with creational nature, I've gone through and put together something that I was told that I would never be able to create. There is a device which I have come up with, and I call it the gravitational field device. Right now, it's a bit of an anomaly because it's partly equal and opposite to gravity. So in different environments, it creates an equal and opposite effect. Now, in space, it should, and it hasn't been tested yet, it should create the equal and opposite reaction to its environment and create gravity, right? It's only a mild gravity, but under the calculation of how it's put together, you should be able to manipulate the gravity, right? And you should be able to manipulate the volume of it, and you should be able to manipulate and associate it to the object in which it's in, and or the object in which it's on, right? It also creates a rippling of wave bands, really. I mean, I was going to say rippling of space, but it's more in the area that space doesn't really ripple at all. Environments of conditions of empty very rarely actually ripple in the sense of rippling the space, right? The tension of gravity and the tension of displacement affects in space because of gravity. So let's say, for instance, that we've got a spaceship, it has a device in it which creates gravity, and you can create a volume of gravity, and you can manipulate that volume of gravity to be inside the ship. And then we can calculate the process of how much we can deal with when it comes to the interior of the actual ship. Now, rotation is something which is an integral part of ensuring that the gravity that is generated and created is actually in an area of being manipulated. So rotation of an object at speed, right, will also help build a connection to internal velocity. Now, internal velocity does have an effect in the environment of the interior of the actual ship, right? So it will be an object which will rotate at high speed. It will create all the electrical fields and electrical currents that you need. It will project an electrical field from inside the ship to outside the ship. You will be able to build yourself a magnetic shield around this structure, and then you will be able to build a laser light spread around the influenced shield, and then you'll be able to see it, right? Now, let's say we can manipulate the magnetic field to match the order of the ship's shield, and then we match the light, laser light beam to match the order of the outside of all of that. So we know that there is constant communication with the computer inside the ship. It will keep an eye on all the shield technology and keep an eye on the actual condition of the shield, right? I also know that we can bring about attention, not only to the light beam, but also attention to the magnetic field as well, and manipulate that to be able to match the ship, and also the light as well, that is the indicator that it's actually there in the first place. And then we'll be able to monitor it from inside the ship using the light technology, crystal computing. And because of it, it all needs to be placed in the realms of nature's rules of regulations. Now, there is a very good reason for it. Nature's rules of regulations, considering that we're going to be going to visit the solar system and other planetary bodies, and the fact that we can manipulate not only the shield and the field and everything else that's required, that we will be able to match, let's say, planetary bodies in our solar system whilst we're visiting. Right? So instead of being obtrusive or evasive in the environment of its own existence, we should be able to slip in through with the ship, nice and safe, with all the relevant waveband frequencies, all the relevant oscillations that might be necessary, and every single thing that will allow the spaceship to be able to be ecology balanced with the solar system. Now, you'll be able to change the environment of your exterior ship to match all areas of astral bodies that exist in the solar system as it is, right? If there is ever in the future that there is a jump drive, which I am working on, capable of jumping great distances, and I don't mean massive great distances between galaxies, I mean tinier, smaller distances in galaxies. And it's known in science fiction and gaming, star jumping, but whether it's going to be possible or not, I can't tell you, right? I do have theories on all sorts of things, and I have theories on all sorts of other things, and there are areas of space tension and gravitational fields and what I would look for, which are highways of high speed compressed time space. And I would basically build a calculative that would seek them out within the ship. And, you know, if there is magnetic fields or anything else in this space tension, maybe, I don't know, right? But anyway, compressed time definitely exists. The effects of what it does also will be a future examination of future science. And if it does exist, then we will be on super speeded highways between stars. And you wouldn't be able to fail to miss it either, right? Because of the theory of the space tension and because of the theory of compressed speeded time. But if you did set off to another star, you may not make it, right? But you still will be traveling at a very fast speed. So I would possibly put this warning in that if you do in the future ever plan to try and see if you can visit another star, then I would use a drone or a probe or anything like that with all the relevant capabilities of riding this highway all the way to the other star. If it reaches it, then we're all right. And then it may be worth calculating whether you could actually put life in the craft and then and do the same thing to see if you can get to that star. If it is, it would be the first, and it would be the first visit and the first time of encountering another star with another solar system attached to it. But you do need to be in line with nature's rules, right? All of nature's rules will offer the future of any spacefaring travel, whether it be within the solar system of our own sun, right, or jumping from one sun to another sun, right? So this is why we need things like light waveband periodic tables, and we need this hooked up to the chemistry periodic table, and we need to know the environments of what and the conditions that are required to be able to even attempt to do any of these further travels. I do have ideas that in our own solar system, and it has been proven that the highways do exist, right? So because we know we have highways that do exist, then it's all a case of where do these highways go and how do we actually access them. Now, there are also rules within our own planetary body that in the higher atmosphere, there is also a highly fast streaming highway that you can ride around the Earth and cut your time down by quite a lot of time saving compared to lower aircraft flight. So we know that we have all of these speeded highways in the atmosphere of the planet of the Earth. We know we have these speeded highways that are in the solar system. And my theory is that there are just as many speeded highways between the stars as well. And so we all need to be in line with the rules of nature to be able to ensure that we can actually build something that will be of use and be helpful in all the unknown environments that we're going to come across. There's a ton of unknown environments, and you're not going to be able to detect them unless you have all of that in the system of your craft, right? So you need the sensor technology to be able to pick it all up. You need all the knowledge of the existence, the possibility of it might be in there. And then you need the confirmation of all the rules of nature will tell you, right, that there is something there if you need to find it, right? So there's a ton of things in the solar system. There's a ton of things in the universe. And every single little bit that we find out relating to cosmology knowledge of the larger picture of how space works and the larger and greater expanse into realms of infinity, which is what we believe in when it comes to the unknown realms of space, the infinite and continuous, continuation of everything. We all, we know that exists. But but to ensure that you are balanced with creation will bring further knowledge of future technology development into realms and areas which are extremely safe, right? So light technology and using gases to be able to create light and energy, and also magnetic rotational floats, which also create electricity. And there are waveband frequencies within the light band which are safe, right? We're talking safe environments. So let's say, for instance, that within technology that we know of, right, that we've had when it comes to argon lights and all of the noble gases hooked up to that particular area of electric and light and all the rest of the stuff that I talk about, at least. And we know that it can create a darkness, right? And it can create a dark area, and it can build a density of a dark place, of a dark area. Now, the industry managed to sort out and fix the problem that these lights were bringing in, but it also brought something else, which is a clarity to the environment. Now, whenever you use any of these particular gases, and you use any of these particular light sources, all light can bring a clarity to the environment. So you can have, it's what photographers call the perfect picture, where the light and the environment and all the conditions are just perfect, and it just builds a crystal clarity to a view which is just breathtaking. And photographers snap it all the time, right? They snap all these environments all the time when they think they're, some of those beautiful environments that you can find. So if you're in the realms of using these noble gases, that you can manipulate them, and you can change their frequencies, and you can change all sorts of things in the same manner that you would do when it came to the old valve technology. So you need to understand the reason why that I use these particular bits of technology developments, things like valves and compression chambers and various other magnetic fields and magnetic floats and environmental particle speeded highways and everything else that I have put together into a spaceship, builds all of the relevant environment in which I know that ship will be in, right? So I know my ship will be in that environment because it creates it for itself. When it gets up into the atmosphere, it will be in balance with the line of the planet. It will get up and get out into the solar system, and then it will also be just as much in line in space, right? But remember, we are attempting to take the environment in which we live in with us. So we need gravity, we need various areas of safe gases to be able to live and breathe in. We need vitamin D quite a lot. So, we need all of that to be able to be part and parcel of the environment of our interior spacecraft. And there's nothing wrong to say that we might be able to exhaust through the shield, right, of the spacecraft, various other things that would emulate, let's say, a comet, or would emulate various areas of leaking atmospheres from other different planetary surfaces and other different planetary bodies that they exhaust out into the solar system. And it has been all exhausting all these materials and particles and everything else into the into the solar system itself. So we do know that the solar system is not only just full of astral bodies, but it's also full of the environment, of which it's every single thing in the solar system that has been exhausting into it, right? Could also be one of the driving factors of the continuation of the burning of our sun, or even the fueling of it, or even the rebuilding possibly over periods of time, that the gravitational field and everything else of the influences of all of this materials that's exhausted into the solar system might actually be sucked towards the sun, right, under its own gravitational pull of its own gravitational field, and may not be able to escape the gravitational reaction. So it may fuel a portion of the sun itself. And I know we don't know for sure, right, exactly how these things have actually come together, and we are still really a little uncertain about how the sun got to its position of its place and how it was put together in its density of composition of its gases, and why we have the planetary systems in our solar system in the manner which we do. And these are questions which, of course, will be possibly answered in the future by other scientists. But it still doesn't stop us from getting out from where we are now and examining all of the environments of just the solar system, So it is vitally important. So I'm going to stress that it's waveband frequencies of all things, including light waveband periodic tables and the chemistry periodic tables, that we do have to take with us, right, into any environment. And we need the technology that will be able to not only detect it, but also be able to help manipulate whatever there is out there, right? Because we're going to need food. We're going to need all sorts of environmental conditions if we're going to be staying out in our containment, right? And it needs to be strong, and it needs to be long lasting, and it needs to be stable. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is if you just build every single rule of nature into the technology and into the testing of the technology, to be able to ensure that every single thing that you put together when it comes to the spacecraft is in line with nature's rules. Now, I have tried to put together a volume of what's the word? Scripts, should we say, to be able to highlight the value and the necessity of all of these rules, right? So the first thing I would do, obviously, if you're building something, is make a checklist of what you're going to create, and then make a checklist of the environments in which you are going to be interacting with, and then make a checklist of all of the technology that you will require to be able to ensure that your ship would be able to comply with all of the environmental rules in which it's going to interact in the solar system I'm talking about. In the future, you'll be probably looking at the waveband frequencies of the stars and the waveband frequencies of various other things. And then you're going to be listening to all of the structural noises and all the chaotic order of waveband frequencies that there are out in the universe that could interfere with your transport, or could interfere with your broadcast, or interfere with any of your technology. Then you have to make sure that you have relevant shields of protection if you need it, right? If it's needed, then try to see if you can put it together in the relevant ways to be able to build the environment of protected security shields. So we have nature shields, which are the magnetic fields and the environmental conditions of the outside of the ship. And then we've got the shell, right? Now, the shell has to be something which is extremely strong, but it also has to be something which is quite what's the word? A little bit like skin, right? So you don't want it too tough, right? And you don't want it too soft, right? You just want the outside of it to be relevant to the environment, and everything that goes into the shell also needs to have the saturation of radiation development into it. Now, I'm not saying that you need to saturate, build something that will cause a saturation into it, but we just need to know how to deal with the environment of it being in space and the fact that we're going to be inside it, right? There wouldn't be any need for it if you never had life in it. If life never existed, you wouldn't need any of that stuff. In the way that I look at it, it will be a crying shame not to have life like man, or even some plants for food and all the rest that we will take with us anyway. And to be able to continuously keep this up, and the growth of it up and all the rest. And, so it is going to be an exciting time, of, are we going to be successful? And are we going to be successful in keeping the, the environment of our food continuously growing and continuously supplying us with nourishment? And, are we going to manage it as a people? We'll definitely be able to manage it for, let's say, a trip to the moon, right? And we'll definitely be able to manage it, let's say, for a trip out into deep space, and then turn around and come back and go and re-enter our own atmosphere. We'll definitely be able to do all of that. But whether we'll be able to literally survive in the solar system from where we are here all the way to the furthest reaches of the solar system and then all the way back again, a good test. I would say it's a good test from where we are to the farthest to most, longest distance, and then come all the way back. Right? How long will it take? Still yet to be found. But we are putting all of this stuff in the world, and I cannot stress how long you will probably have to wait, right? When I was a kid, and I'll make this brief, I wanted something there and then, right? And I want something like that even now, right? And I'm a grown man, 62. And I know through all the knowledge of education and training and testing and building and putting things out and all sorts of other global issues that cause lots of losses, that there are at least 50 years, right? And then you can add at least another 30 on top of that. And by the time you've finished, it's going to be 100 years. And by the time you finish that one, you can guarantee it's going to be probably about 200 years' time, right? The thing is, though, the encouragements are these. Even though it might be 200 years' time, before we even manage to get a spaceship in the manner in which I'm talking about a spaceship, right? If I could build it myself now, it would be done, right? And I can build this now, and it would be done. The thing is this. We would miss out in so much education, and we would miss out in so much of the development of what we've already gone through as a species of hominid, right? Now, when it was Einstein, it took 50 years to get Einstein stuff confirmed, right? It took another 30 years after that for the scientists to be able to manipulate and wield anything out of it. Then it took another to 100 years to be able to say that we've actually got something, right? Then it's been another, it'll be another 100 years to say that, but in the meantime of all of this, right, now we're talking about the invention of the telegraph, which was in the, let's have a think. When they started thinking about the telegraph, we are talking about probably 1066, right? And when they started to improve the communicational networks, we're talking all the ages from the birth of conversation, and it's taken all that time to be able to get to what we know as the internet, right? So the birth of the telegraph was probably 1600, which I do know is 1600, or the 1600s. But there was for it to be born in the 1600s. Then it was actually being contemplated and thought of in the 15 and 1400s, like I say, 1066, right? So it's taken that long to get to the internet, which is what we have now, right? I'm talking to you on YouTube, internet. So it's taken that long to get this level of technology and communications to a point where we are satisfied with it, right? Not only that, but there is also, there is also the ability to be able to develop that even further into the realms of where I am, which is spacecraft, spaceship, solar system, and still communicating all the way through. So that's everything in a nutshell. And I'll finish off by saying, don't forget rules of nature, right? Be in balance and in line with nature's values of its own rules, and you will fit into every single unknown environment that you can come across. So this is LTSQ. This is Michael Ian Hammond, ECO, and thank you for listening.